Welcome back, students. Today, our lab is about network segmentation and logging. And after this one, we'll be learning how can we install WASA in a network environment. So that's the typical setup that we have. We'll try to use more VMs today in order to make sure that we are segmenting the network in a way that we are using it for logging purposes. Now, before we'll start, let me show you the diagram of what we are trying to achieve today. So that's our network diagram. And as you can see that we have a firewall, then we have a firewall management, and we have different zones for that. So let's start it from the basic explanation of it. So first of all, try to understand its structure and discuss like why it's critical for enterprise security. We'll also highlight the role of centralized logging using log01 and why organizations need efficient log management to detect security threats. So first of all, if you'll see, we have different segments in our network diagram today. So when we say that they are segmented, it means that they are placed that we have placed different devices and systems in a specific network zone based on their functions and security requirements. On top, as you can see, that we have cyber data center at the very top. We have an IP address of 192.168.4.0 and it's a /24 network. This represents the external network or cloud infrastructure that our enterprise interacts with. It could be hosting our applications, databases, or any external services. Traffic from this data center must pass through the gateway router, which is SEC350XX, which is right under it, and which is responsible for managing the external connections and ensuring a controlled access to internal networks. Under that, we have a WAN zone. We call it a perimeter zone as well. And it has a network of 10.0.17.0. Again, it's a /24 network which connects external facing devices to our enterprise. Now you can see two key devices there, Road Warrior 1, which is a remote workstation that could represent a traveling employee or external partner accessing the network. Then we have a Firewall 01, which represents or which protects the internal network by controlling the inbound and outbound traffic. The Firewall 01, which is the technical name of it that we are using in our assignment, is the first line of defense against external threats. So all traffic between the WAN and internal network must pass through it. Now let's look into the internal network zones of the enterprise network. It is divided into three primary zones for security and functionality. And as you can see that these three zones are DMZ, LAN, and management. DMZ, which is a demilitarized zone, it has an IP address 172.16.50. It's a /29 network. The DMZ contains systems that need to interact with both internal and external networks, but should be isolated for security reasons. So in DMZ, we are keeping our web server that may host a website or provide application services. Now the question is that why is it important? Placing web servers in a DMZ would ensure that even if they are compromised, attackers cannot directly access the internal network. After that, we have our LAN network, and it is 172.16.50 /24 network. It's a LAN where most internal employees and systems would operate securely behind the firewall. So the key devices that you can see under that is Workstation 1, that is a Windows computer for internal users. Then we have Management 01, it's a Linux-based management system for administrative tasks. And then we have Firewall Management, a firewall management device to control the security policies. Now again, the question is that why is it important? Segmenting internal user workstations from critical servers would improve the security and would prevent the threats from spreading. Then finally, we have a management network, which is 172.16.200. It's a /28 network. This is a highly secure segment dedicated to managing security operations. The key devices that you can see in this one is a WASA, which is a security monitoring system often used for SIEM, which is security information and event management. And then we have Management 02, that's another management workstation. Now, again, why it's important? Because management and security systems should always be isolated to prevent attackers from easily accessing them in case of a breach. Now on the far left, you can see a log server. The importance of a log server is a centralized logging. So what is log01? It's a centralized log server that collects logs from different devices like firewall, web server, workstation, and security tools, etc. Logs would help to detect suspicious activities, troubleshoot network issues, and to ensure compliance with security policies. Now, why is it isolated? Logs must be protected from tampering. For example, if an attacker gains access to the system, we still need logs to track the activities or whatever they did on the network. Now, how it would work is that the logs from Web01, Firewall01, and other devices are forwarded to Log01, where they are stored securely for analysis purposes. Security teams use these logs to detect threats, failed login attempts, unauthorized access, or malware activities, etc. So before we'll start the lab, just to wrap it up, first of all, we have network segmentation, like we have different zones, DMZ, LAN, and management, that would ensure that a breach in one area doesn't compromise the entire network. Number two is firewall protection. We have firewall that would control the traffic flow between the WAN and internal networks, reducing exposure to attacks, etc. Then we have least privilege, which is management server, which is management 01 and WASA. They are isolated, ensuring only authorized persons can access them. Then we have centralized logging. So all activities are recorded in log01, and it would help for the security teams to monitor, analyze, and to respond threats. And finally, authentication and monitoring. So SSH key authorization and authentication for log forwarding, Web01, and Firewall01 would enhance the visibility into login attempts, etc. So the final thought is that in this lab, we are setting up a secure, well-organized enterprise network that would follow the best practices in a network segmentation and log management. By the end of this setup, we'll have a functioning centralized log system, which is Log01, that would help security teams monitor activities and detect intrusions and investigate security events. The setup would reflect real-world enterprise environment, where segmentation, monitoring, and controlled access are critical to preventing cyber threats. Logging in one of the most valuable security tools, and then if something goes wrong, logs help us in find that actually what happened. So let's start from our workstation 1, which is on our LAN, and make sure that the interface is facing it to the LAN. As you can see, we are on our Windows computer. First of all, it's workstation 1. So the first thing is that we'll have to rename the computer, and in order to do that, we'll go over here, change the computer name. It would require a restart, but we'll name it as workstation 01, and name it with your name, and press OK. And close. It would ask for a restart. I'll restart it later because I just want to create a user account, a local administrator account on this as well before I'll restart the computer, and I'll define the static IP address on that as well. So in order to do that, I'll go to managers, to manage, and then I'll go to local users, and I'll create a new user account here called Syed, and I'll give it a password, and I don't need to check that. Password never expires. Just create it and close it. You can find it here. The other thing is I'll have to add the user to the administrators group, so I'll go over here, advanced, find it, and select the administrators from here. Press OK. I can get rid of this one, and just for security purposes I can enable this account as well, and set up a password for this one as well, so that in case if we'll forget the password, we have another account over there. So once that's done, press OK. Now we can close it. The other thing is that we'll have to define a static IP address on this one. So in order to do that, I'll go to my network manager, to your network and security settings and network sharing, etc. Go to properties. I don't need TCP/IP version 6, so I'll uncheck it and go to and define your static IP address over here. We have already provided you your static IP addresses. And I'll define the IP address like this one. My IP address is 50. You can check it on your list. Press OK. Press OK. Press close. And we can close this one. You can see that the icon for the network is changed. Now we'll restart this computer. As you can see, we have restarted the computer. Now we'll go to PowerShell, and you can see that I'm logged in from my admin account, which I just created. So I'll type who am I, and it would tell me that I'm Sayed. Then if I'll take my host name, it's telling as if we renamed the computer. And if we would like to ping champlain.edu, we can see that it's responding. It means that it is even connected to the internet. Next step is that we need to update firewall 01 for LAN and management NAT configuration. So for that, we'll access our BIOS, which is our firewall. Then we'll configure the NAT for management to WAN communication. So first of all, as always, we'll go to configure mode and press enter. And now you'll have to define some rules over here. So as you can see that I have configured NAT for management to WAN, and I'm defining the outbound interface as Ethernet 0. Then my source address is 172.16.200.0/28, and then 30 translation address masquerade. And then I just committed and saved the configuration. So now we need to validate the LAN access on our workstation 1, which we just configured. So we'll check on our Windows workstation and try to ping and see if we can have access to internet on this one. So as we can see that there is a connectivity, no issues at all so far. So as you can see that I tried to access my web server from workstation 1, and we know that our web server is in our DMZ and we can easily access it from here. It means that the configuration is correct so far. So now we'll configure our firewall management, and you can see that firewall management has been added over here. Now before we'll start, just make sure that you are making necessary changes to its network interfaces. As you can see, I have changed both adapters to my LAN and management over here. Since if you remember the diagram, this firewall management is sitting in between the LAN and management. So we need to configure the communication between these two different segments. So that's why we are selecting two different interfaces for that. So as you can see, I'm in my firewall management, and the first thing we'll do is after logging in, we'll go in configure mode, and then we'll have to set the host name over here. So for that, we'll type in set system hostname firewall management. After that, sign out and sign in again. So you'll be able to see the name as firewall management over here. Now we'll have to configure the network interfaces on it for our LAN and management. As you can see that we selected two network adapters. One is facing to LAN and the other one is facing to management. So now we'll write the commands to configure the network. As you can see, I have defined the Ethernet 0 as LAN, and this is my IP address for that. And then for my Ethernet 1, I'm giving a description as management, and then I have configured 172.16.200.2 as the IP address for that, and it's /28, commit and save. And if you want to see the interfaces, you can type show interfaces. Just make sure that you'll exit from configure mode, type show interfaces, and you'll be able to see the interfaces over here. So now we'll go to the configure mode, and we'll just make sure that there is no DHCP over here. So we'll delete the DHCP from Ethernet interface 0. So we just checked to make sure that DHCP is not there. So I passed in a command delete interfaces Ethernet 0 address DHCP. Then we'll be defining a static route and DNS forwarding over here. So as you can see, I have defined the protocol static route of 8 with the next hop as 172.16.150.2, and then the system name server as 172.16.150.2, and then we are defining the DNS forwarding listen address from 172.16.200.2, and then forwarding allow from 172.16.200.0/28. Now our next step is that we'll be configuring our management 02, which is in our management subnet. So for that, just make sure that your adapter is facing your management interface. Now in our management 02, we have renamed the server and we have defined a static IP on this one, just to make sure that it's 172.16.200.11 and it's 255.255.255.240, and for default gateway I'm using 172.16.200.2. Now the next step is that we'll implement RIP on firewall 01 and firewall management. Instead of using double NAT, we'll implement RIP routing to simplify the communication between management and LAN. So we'll enable RIP on firewall 01 for LAN and DMZ, and then we'll enable RIP on firewall management for LAN and management. At the moment, I'm on my firewall 01 and I'll enable RIP on it for LAN and DMZ. So you'll have to be in configure mode and then write the following commands. As you can see, I have defined the RIP interface to Ethernet 2 and then RIP network to 172.16.50.0/29. Just keep it in mind that that's for LAN and DMZ. Now we are on our firewall management, and here we'll enable RIP for LAN and management. So on my firewall management, I have RIP interface on Ethernet 0, and then I am defining set protocols RIP network as 172.16.200.0/28. Now as you can see on our firewall, on our management 02, since we have configured RIP on our firewall 01 and firewall management, the icon over there has been changed. It means that it should be connected to the internet. So if we are going on google.com, you can see that we have a connectivity on our management server. So you can use who am I over here. So I have renamed it, and then if you'll check the host name, you can find management 02 Sayed as well. Now at this point, we'll shut down our log 01 because now we'll be configuring WASA, which would be used to collect the logs from the configured systems. So for WASA installation, we have a Ubuntu server over here. Just like any other server, we'll go to the network interfaces of it and just make sure that it is facing to our management network. I'll cover the detailed installation of WASA, but at the moment we are just preparing the server. It would take some time to start the services since it is looking for DHCP, but we'll just configure it so that we can install WASA on it, but just go through the IP addresses and rest of the things in this one. So we are logged into our Ubuntu. You can change the password if you want, and then we'll have to define a static IP on this one. I would highly recommend to check the port over here. It's ENS160. So now we'll use netplan in order to define the IP address on this one. So in order to do that, I'll type in sudo nano and we'll go to netplan 00 installer config.yaml, provide your password, and you're here. Now we'll type in the IP address over here. As you can see, I have defined the IP address over here. My address is 172.16.200.10. My routes are via 172.16.200.2, and the name server is also 172.16.200.2. After that, save it and close the file and pass the command netplan apply. So then we'll define the host name as your name WASA-Sayed, and then you can ping Google and see that if you have internet connectivity. Then you can even pass the curl command to your web server and just make sure that you can get an output from there as well. So the next step is we'll have to update the client logging information on our Web 01 and Firewall 01. So we are logged into our Web 01 and I want to remove old syslog settings from here. So on my Web 01, I passed the command to remove the etc rsyslogd and sec350 configuration, and then I restarted rsyslog. Likewise, on my Firewall 01, I passed the command to delete system syslog host 172.16.50.5 and just make sure that you can commit and save it over here. Now, since we have configured the basic settings for our BIOS, now I want to take a dump of the configurations which are there on Firewall 01. So in order to get the configurations, you'll have to go to your Firewall 01, make sure you're not in the configure mode, and you'll type show configuration commands and then grep syslog global, then ntp login console configure hardware ID loopback configurations and then contract, and press enter. You'll be able to see all rules which were there on your firewall. So you can use this command both on firewall and firewall management in order to get a copy of all your policies on your firewalls. So that was our lab on segmentation. In our next lab, we'll learn how can we install WASA.